As a parent carer, can you share your experience of attending an annual health check and tell us about any positive outcomes that have followed this?
I've always taken my son to his medical reviews. They're really important, but they can also be really, really difficult. My son's non-verbal and doesn't really understand what it's all about, but clearly it's really important everybody has a medical check. I've found over the years that we've managed to do more and more at each check with him, and I think that's down to the fact that when I arrive for the check, I always try and work with the GP to make sure they understand the best approach to take with my son. I have to tell myself they're not the experts I am on him. They're the experts on all things medical, but I'm the expert on my son in terms of the way he behaves, what works for him, what doesn't work for him, and I owe it to him to make sure I help that process as much as I can. So one of the other things I do, my son's been in supported living for the last 5 years. I always take a member of the care team with me. I'm not always going to be here. Some years into the future I won't be around, and I can't leave my son exposed to having things done where no one else knows the best way to work with him. So I make sure I take a carer, support worker with me every single time, and several members of the team that work in his house have now been with me more than once, and they are really good at supporting him in there. So when I say supporting him in there, the things I mean are we encourage him, we jolly him along, we sing nursery rhymes sometimes. That's fine, I don't mind singing a nursery rhyme in front of everyone when I know that that makes my son amused and it means it relaxes him and he will go along with some of the tests that he's being asked to have done upon him. Something else I always do is when I go into the surgery, usually in every doctor's surgery there's a fan. Well, my son loves fans. So I will go in and I'll say to the doctor, oh great, you've got a fan, let's put that on straight away. You'll have his attention from the get-go and you'll be able then to get him to do some of the things we need him to do. Now clearly the doctor can speak to my son, but my son won't understand most of what he's saying. But I do encourage the doctor to talk to him, and then I will answer by including my son in that. So I'll say things like, well, we can do this, can't we? Yes, come on. Let's let the doctor, give your hand to the doctor. Let's see what we can do now. And then maybe sing him a song or chat away to him. Or the carer will step in. The carer sits in there and sings nursery rhymes sometimes too. And I found every time I've gone, we've been able to do a little bit more of a check. So the last review that we had a full check of his testicles to make sure they were healthy. And he didn't really understand what was going on, but he thought it was quite funny. And we jollied him along and made it quite a sort of a humorous thing. I also asked about checking for diabetes, as that's in my family. And we decided there was a small finger prick test they could do. And I just said, let's have a go. Let's just try. So we sort of explained to my son what was going to happen. And I said, come on, let's put your hand on here. And he did. And it was over so quickly. He just sort of looked at me, looked at his finger. But that's another test done. That's something else that I can ensure that my son is healthy and doesn't need some support with something like that. The first time, a few years back, we did blood pressure. Now, having your blood pressure taken, if you've ever had that done, you know that it can feel very, very strange on your arm. And my son started to look at it, but we just kept encouraging him and saying, you're nearly there, nearly done, well done, well done, and then it was over. And now every time we go, he knows what to expect, and we do the blood pressure test, and, we get it all done. But I think for me, the word that's most important is involve. Be involved. Involve yourself as the parent carer, the expert in your son, daughter, whoever you're supporting. You are the expert on what works for them. And so if you can shape the way the medical examinations take place, and I think that the GPs or the medical experts are quite grateful for that level of support. They don't know what works for your son, your daughter, but you do. So you have every right to go in there and lead the way, show them. It's not a battle, it's an education. I see it as educate those people into what works for your son or your daughter. Out of the review, often we get things like, is he going to the dentist regularly? And I've said in the past, yes, we do. And I've found that the dentist that I've gone to over the last few years has been absolutely amazing in supporting my son. he sort of forgets, if he doesn't go regularly to these things, what he needs to do. So they've got him on a 3-month visit. His teeth are fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but every 3 months we go to the dentist, and the dentist then can see more and more each time he goes, because he's very wary of opening his mouth, or he's unsure what's going to happen, but he remembers 3 months to the next 3 months. So that's been a great thing that's come out of these annual reviews. The other thing is, the last time we went, the doctor said, let's see if we can do the opticians this time. Well, bear in mind, my son can't read, can't write, he's non-verbal, he's got a very, very low mental age. We knew that was going to be a bit of a challenge. He's very suspicious of all the equipment in the opticians, but we had a go. Deanna took a carer with me, we chatted away to him, we take photo books with us sometimes because he likes his photographs and sort of can distract while the optician's asking me some questions. And then the optician managed to do a couple of very basic tests and could tell that his eyes were healthy. That's a step further ahead than we were before. And all of these things matter to all of us. I think we just have to find the way that works for those of us that don't quite fit into the usual patterns of behaviour, but we can make it work for them. And I think we have to just remember, we as the parent carers are the experts on that. And it's really, really good to try and educate other people in how to make that difference and make it happen for them. Before we go to the appointment together, we receive a pre-health check questionnaire, and they're quite long, and it can seem like there's just lots of questions and you wonder what's going to happen to those questions. But I do think it's really, really important to fill them in, because it's an opportunity to really describe the situation with your son, your daughter, whoever you're caring for, and to get it down on paper. However, I do feel that one important element that could be, and it'd be nice to see this as a development of the questionnaire that arrives before you go, is to ask straight away from the person who's filling it in, whether that is the disabled person themselves, or their parent carer, or a mixture of both. I'd like to see the question, what approach would you like us to take with you, or what approach would work for you when you arrive at the surgery? So, for example, I would write in there some weird things, but they are important to my son. I'd say, make sure there's a standing fan in the room, or a table fan, because that will distract, that will calm, that will make him feel comfortable. You know, make sure there's not a lot of other people around, like trainees, where he might feel overwhelmed by the number of people there. Make sure people aren't coming in and out. Make sure that when you greet him when he comes through the door, he likes smiley, friendly faces, and he likes to be talked to, even if he doesn't look like he's understanding it. I can hear what you're saying, you don't need to look at me, I can help with the answers, but I like him to be included. Now, that sort of information probably won't change over the years, and I'd like to think that they could have that sort of information on file at the surgery, and then when they send out the annual health check, they send a copy of that with it and say, is this the approach you'd still like us to take? Anything else you'd like to add to that? Because I think that is as important as the medical information you're putting on the form. They do ask you on the form, how do you communicate? Do you use sign language, Makaton? Are you verbal, etc., etc.? But I'm not sure what they do with that information. And I think the best place for that information would be in that what approach best works for you. And I hope that they would change that to make that something that makes people feel a lot more comfortable when they arrive. Knowing that somebody knows my son and knows what to expect makes it a lot easier. It's a very difficult thing when you take somebody with a disability where their behaviours maybe make it more complicated and challenging within the surgery. If people are prepared and prepared to let you be involved, then that will make all the difference, and maybe more and more people then would feel comfortable about doing their annual checks.
This film was co-produced by staff at Ace Anglia and colleagues from NHS Suffolk and North East Essex. Thank you, Jill, for being part of this film. For more information, contact info@aceanglia.com.